G'day everyone, and welcome to the 19th Agony Anth, part of my collaboration with the Charles Darwin University Law Student Society. This time I've been asked, what's the Priestley 11 all about? And should we really have it? This is Sir Samuel Griffith. He was a barrister who entered politics and became the Attorney General, then the Premier of Queensland, then the Chief Justice of Queensland, then the first Chief Justice of Australia. So he went all right. And he didn't have a law degree. Back in those days, university students mostly completed a Bachelor of Arts, often in classic languages, so Greek and Latin. Then after they finished university, they started their articled clerkship with a law firm while studying after hours until they were ready to sit the bar exam. Dedicated law degrees didn't really start until about the 1890s, and for a long time, each university just designed and taught its own law degree. And this worked fine, because for many decades there were very few law schools and quite a small legal profession, so the law schools just naturally found themselves teaching in concert with the local profession. In the 1970s and 1980s, more law schools were springing up, the profession was growing, and in the early 1970s, the United Kingdom had adopted a standard set of core subjects for law students to study. Australia followed suit. There were several committees and several iterations, including a key report in 1982 called the McGarvey Report, and the end product was the Priestley 11, named after the late Justice Bill Priestley QC, who chaired the committee which introduced them. In reality, the Priestley 11 was really a Priestley 12 because it was always assumed correctly that each university would also have a foundation or introductory subject. The Priestley 11 are the familiar 11 subjects: admin law, civil procedure, company law, contracts, criminal law, equity and trusts, professional conduct, evidence, constitutional law, property and torts. If you do not pass those 11 subjects, you cannot be admitted to practice in Australia. What you may not know is that the Priestley requirements go deeper than subject level. For each subject, the Law Admissions Consultative Committee prescribes things that must be taught. So, for instance, within contract law, universities are required to teach formation, including capacity, formalities, privity and consideration, content and construction of contracts, vitiating factors, discharge, remedies, and the assignment of contractual rights. This obviously reduces the room to move for your lecturer or your university. The course has to be structured in such a way that all these requirements are met or the students can't be admitted. And courses are audited to make sure that those requirements are met. Often enough, to make sure that the subject contents are met, it's necessary to run more than one subject, so to break a Priestley subject into two components, Contract A and Contract B. This is also often done with torts, criminal law, and in some universities, constitutional law. That in turn can reduce the number of elective subjects available for students to complete. If your degree is 24 subjects, which is pretty typical, and you're doing an intro subject, then the Priestley 11, with 4 of those subjects split in half, that's 16 subjects just to get you through the Priestleys, leaving just 8 electives. Many electives are not offered every term, and so it may be challenging for students to structure your degree in a way that lets you do the electives you're really keen on, while also covering the Priestleys. The Priestley 11 are an ongoing source of controversy in the legal world. One controversy is around whether the right 11 subjects have been chosen, or whether the world has evolved in ways that change the validity of those choices. It's arguable, for instance, that many more lawyers practice in family law than practice in trust law. Most lawyers probably learn enough equity in their intro subject and in contract law to get them by. Practitioners who won't practice in litigation probably get very little value from studying evidence or civil procedure. There's an argument that a legal drafting course would be far more useful than either of those. There are challenges to the Priestley 11 from elsewhere in the university. For instance, many universities now have a distinct policy of increasing the Indigenous content and the international content of degrees right across the curriculum. Finally, there's a challenge from the fact that many students don't actually want to practice. They want a law degree. They want to be able to say they've learned a lot about the law, but they don't ever want to be a lawyer. Why shouldn't those students be able to earn a Bachelor of Laws without passing the Priestley 11? At the moment, if you don't pass those 11, you don't graduate, even if the last thing you'd ever want is to be a lawyer. On the other hand, though, the forces which led to the standardisation of law degrees are still important. If there is a Priestley 11, which is required for your Bachelor of Laws, then anyone with that degree has met the basic requirement to complete their practical legal training and then apply for admission. And so it does make sense to say that there is a central core of things that everyone ought to know in order to be a lawyer. So how do we resolve this? I know I'm not going to get away with sitting on the fence in this video. I don't want to be disingenuous and too timid to put forward my views. I think there is a core set of materials that you do need to complete in depth in order to be considered a Bachelor of Laws. However, for me, that's limited to intro, contracts, torts, criminal law, constitutional, and admin. 5 of the current Priestley 11 plus intro. Let's assume contracts and torts are split into 2 subjects. That means you'd cover all of my compulsories in 8 subjects, a third of your degree. Now, however, imagine that for the rest of your degree, you could do a range of mini subjects, each lasting about 4 weeks, roughly equivalent to a third of a current subject. 4 weeks of work plus an assessment. Instead of doing my compulsory 8 subjects and then another 16 electives, imagine if you earned your degree by doing those 8 compulsories and then 48 mini subjects. Each student would be able to decide their own strategy for those mini subjects. You might pick an area of particular interest, such as family law, and you might do every single mini subject going in that area. Or you might decide that you want to do 1 or 2 mini subjects in as many different areas of law as possible until you've worked out which parts of the law really grab you. We could even make some of those mini subjects compulsory. So let's say you did have to do the introductory mini subject in ethics, company law, and property law. You'd still have heaps more opportunity to pick and choose and develop a law degree which reflects your interests and allows you to deepen your knowledge. My guess is that if we did that, you'd suddenly see a bunch of subjects that don't exist right now because they can't justify 12 weeks of instruction and they mightn't get enough students to be viable. For instance, you could easily sustain 4-week courses in domestic violence law, tenancy law, migration law, Roman law, Indigenous circle sentencing, drugs and the law and popular culture, Anglo-Saxon law, international human rights law, LGBTI law, cyber law, intellectual property law, director's duties. I bet you could come up with 100 more. And then, imagine if you could do many of these online and cross-institutionally. Imagine if every term you were expected to complete 12 mini subjects, 8 of which must be from your home institution, but the other 4 could come from any Australian law school. It would be a new era in Australian legal teaching. It's not going to happen, but isn't it great to imagine? So in my mind, there are too many subjects in the Priestley 11, but the real problem is that our law degrees are pretty much structured and taught in the same way that they have been for decades. For now though, get those Priestleys done, keep the questions coming to me, and I'll see you again soon.